Hi everybody, my name's Andrew and today I'm driving a basically brand new Toyota Avalon Hybrid. I got up at 5 a.m. this morning to take my dad to the airport, and as a result of that I have his car while he's gone. So in this video I'm going to talk about what this car is like to live with for a week, as well as why I like the Avalon so much, and since it's a hybrid I'm going to take it on my MPG test loop as well. And actually, speaking of, I'm going to go ahead and reset my overall average fuel economy there and track that throughout the week too. But first I'm going to give you guys a quick walk around of the car as I normally do, so let's jump to that. Because of my work schedule and the weather, among other things, this video will be shot over multiple days and sort of put together at the end, so it will be a true week of living with the car. Today is actually the coolest day of the week, as it turns out, and it's my day off. It's like 75 today, and I think on Wednesday it's gonna be like 96 or something stupid. Anyway, today I'm gonna give you guys a walk around of the car, show you all around it, and also give you a few of my impressions thus far. This particular Avalon is finished in wind chill pearl, and because it's a limited trim, gets these 18-inch alloy wheels, which personally I'm a big fan of. Also, the limited and touring models get these upgraded LED headlights, which sort of have sequential turn signals and also say LED vision tech in them. And by the way, yes, this is a functional air duct, as you can see, which on an Avalon, to me, is just hilarious. The rear end of the Avalon also gets full LED lighting, of course, with, again, sort of sequential signals, although to get around the regulations here in the US, they're sort of backwards sequential. Overall, though, I think this is the best looking Avalon they've ever made, by far. And honestly, this might be a controversial statement, but I think this might be one of my favorite looking current Toyotas too. I am partial to, you know, a green Tacoma TRD Pro, and obviously the Supra and the 86, but outside of those cars, I think this might be my favorite. This is what the key looks like. It's the same basic Toyota key that you get on a lot of their cars nowadays, although it does have a little bit of silver trim on the top, and since it's a hybrid, the Toyota logo has the blue accent. Hopping inside the Avalon, as I mentioned before, this particular car has the cognac interior, which personally is my favorite. I think the color of this interior is absolutely stunning. I especially love the door panels here with the stitching and silver trim. I just think it looks really nice. Anyway, hopping inside, honestly, I feel like I'm in a Lexus right now. It's that nice. There are a few cheaper materials here and there. There's some, you know, trim in the areas where you're not going to touch, like the bottom of the doors that's plastic, but overall everything looks and feels very, very nice in here, which is a good thing though, because I mean, this car brand new was 45 grand, so you are pretty much in Lexus territory anyway. The difference though is that at that price point, the Avalon is fully loaded. I mean, it's got cooled front seats, heated rear seats, heated steering wheel, all the active safety stuff that you would expect nowadays. Sunroof, JBL sound system, Apple CarPlay, heads-up display, 360 camera. I mean, it goes on and on. Whereas the equivalent ES at that price point would not have all of the options. In fact, a fully loaded ES is well over 50, especially for a hybrid one. So therefore, the Avalon, in my opinion, is a way better deal. Some might say that the Avalon is the poor man's Lexus, but I actually think it's the smart man's Lexus. I mean, just look for yourself and see. I already pointed out the door panels earlier. The wood, whether it's real or not, does have some texture to it and looks nice. This steering wheel is gorgeous, in my opinion. I'm curious, though, how well it's going to wear on the sides. The fake air vent is a bit of a trend nowadays, but I think it looks nice. The seats have the same stitching and pattern as the door panels. The perforation on the seats even has some pattern to it, and on the headrest too, which I've just noticed. The back seat looks nice. I mean, I do think this color helps it out quite a bit. I don't think I would be as impressed if it was light gray or something boring, but overall, I mean, you get a really nice interior, you get all the tech and features, and it's at a cheaper price than the equivalent ES. So this is the way to go. So the next section of this video was supposed to be the MPG test loop. However, That entire part of the video got recorded with no audio because I decided to plug the GoPro into the car to keep the battery charged and didn't realize that it was trying to use the car as an audio source. So here we are, back at the garage with the car, like a month later. I'm going to save the results of the fuel economy loop until the very end, because first I wanted to talk about some driving impressions and things that I noticed in the rest of my time with the car. I suppose that is the benefit of filming this a month later, is the fact that I did actually have a full week with the car before talking about it. Anyway, for those that don't know, this is actually my dad's second Avalon. And funny enough, his first one was also a Hybrid Limited, and it was white. It was a 2013? Yeah, 2013. He had it for 6 or 7 years and then just recently got this one. But I wanted to make some comparisons between that Avalon and this one, since I've now got a little bit of driving experience with both of them. And overall, I mean, the Avalon drives just how you would expect it to. It's a big, comfortable sedan, right? It's got really great seats. It's quiet. I mean, the suspension is nice and soft. And I have to say, though, this one is less pillowy than the last one. This is definitely more sporty than the last one, both when it comes to the seats. They have more aggressive bolsters, and also to the ride and steering. The steering in this one is noticeably sharper than the last one. It's not sporty necessarily, but it is a lot sharper. Drivetrain is very similar to the last Avalon. It's a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder, hybrid of course, front wheel drive, CVT. It makes about 200 horsepower, 0 to 60s in the 7-second range, which is not fast obviously, but for most people it's perfectly adequate. Since it's the hybrid, it's got blended braking where the brakes are a combination of the physical steel brakes and then also regenerative braking, which puts energy back into the battery. And the blended braking system on this one, it may just be because it's newer, is substantially smoother than the old one. The old one, you could definitely tell where the regen stopped and where the actual brakes began, but this one, it's much more difficult to tell, and I guess we'll see how long that lasts, see how that holds up over time, because the old one did have 130,000 miles on it by the end. Since it's been almost 10 years since the previous generation Avalon came out, technology and features-wise, of course, this car is leaps and bounds ahead of that one. It's got all the modern safety stuff that you would expect: radar cruise, lane assist, automatic high beams, the lot. I mean, all that stuff's pretty standard on most Toyota products nowadays anyway. There are, however, a few things that this one is missing that the old one did have, which is kind of weird. For one thing, it's missing the cushion extender on the driver's seat. If you've ever seen that before, basically the old one had a little electronic motor in it that would extend the thigh cushion out on the driver's seat to make it more comfortable for people with longer legs. And this one doesn't have that. I think it's partly because the seats in this one are meant to be more sporty, but either way, something I did miss. Also, I couldn't figure out whether it had rain-sensing wipers or not, and I don't think it does. There's not a clearly marked auto position or anything on the wiper stalk. There's no setting for it in the system as far as I can tell, and they seem to behave just like regular intermittent wipers. Not a big deal, but again, something that's missing from the old one. It also is missing rear climate control. It has rear heated seats, but there's no temperature adjustment in this car for the backseat passengers. And there's also no sunshade in the rear window. The old one had a powered sunshade. I know that's a little bit old school now, but still kind of a nice thing to have in the summer. That said, though, there are still plenty of other new features, new additions that I do really love. For one thing, heads-up display. It is a little bit blurry. It's not the most crisp heads-up display that I've seen, but it is still a nice thing to have and has all the functionality that you'd expect. 360 camera is a nice touch as well, and it has one of those cool 3D rotating surround views like some of the BMW and Audi products do. Honestly, that's more of a gimmick than anything in my opinion, but the 360 camera I do really love in general. Since this car has an electric parking brake finally, it can have brake hold, which most people don't seem to care about, I've noticed, but personally I really like brake hold, or auto hold as it's sometimes called. It just means that you can take your foot off the brake at a red light or in a drive-through. And of course, heated steering wheel, which doesn't do much in the summer. It's currently 91 degrees out here at 6:30 in the evening. But either way, the cars that I've had with heated steering wheels, I really like them. Lastly, a few random things that I noticed while living with the car. One thing is the Apple CarPlay. It has Apple CarPlay, it's not wireless, and it is incredibly slow to connect. And then, once it's connected, it doesn't come up on screen by default, meaning you have to go into the infotainment system and hit Apple CarPlay every single time. On the subject of that, actually, it also doesn't have any USB-C ports, which is not that big of a deal, obviously, but something I've kind of expected, given that I think pretty much every other new car nowadays has USB-C ports. Unrelated to any of that, though, the rear seat folds down, which doesn't sound revolutionary, but the old Avalon did not have a folding rear seat, meaning that the trunk and the interior of the vehicle could not be connected. You could not store larger items in it. And of course, this is going to come as a surprise to nobody, but I was really impressed with the fuel economy of this thing. I reset my overall average when I first got the car, as I said at the beginning of the video, and for the week that I had it, mainly just driving to and from work, I averaged about 40 MPG, which is pretty good, I mean, for what it is. Obviously, it's not as good as a Prius, but this also has cooled seats, so, you know. Where it did get a little bit surprising, though, was on my fuel economy test loop. I have a 52-mile highway loop that I try to run with cars that I test locally. You may have seen it a few times before. And what I love about doing these test loops is that I'm doing 70 miles an hour in the 70 the whole way, right? And you get passed by absolutely every other car on the road. Dump trucks, Priuses, state troopers, you name it, you're getting passed by it. Anyway, the car at the end of the 52-mile loop said 47 MPG, which is really impressive, actually. And I calculated it from the pump as well. I used the same pump both times to try to get an accurate reading. And from the pump, this car did 50 miles to the gallon. Who needs a Prius? Buy this. I mean, seriously, that is really, really impressive. And on that note, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up here. I'm gonna go get it out of the heat now, preferably. Bearing in mind the obvious price difference between this and a Prius, which would you have? Put your thoughts down in the comments below. Or if you found it informative, give it a thumbs up. And consider subscribing for plenty more content to come.